Hello, my name is Pablo Baños Lopez, co-founder behind Tapp, a platform to manage and configure servers on the cloud. Today I'm going to show you how to deploy Magento, an open source e-commerce platform, over a multi-cloud infrastructure with the database on a backend server on Rackspace and the web frontend on a server on Amazon. So the first thing I do is log in with my account at Tapp. And now I need to define two templates, so I click on templates. The first template is for our Magento backend server, that is, the server hosting the database. So I add a template, I will call it Magento backend, and I will use an Ubuntu generic image, and I add it. We need to add some services to this template, so I click on services, and I will add a MySQL server recipe, so I click on databases recipes, and now I look for the MySQL server recipe. There it is. We also need a Magento MySQL recipe, so I select web recipes, and then on the Magento section, the Magento MySQL recipe. Now we will need some specific configurations for the recipes, so I add a child, MySQL, accept. And to this MySQL node I add another node, an attribute, allow remote root to allow incoming connections, remote connections, and I will set this attribute to true. I save it, and I will add some other attributes. I click on MySQL, I add a child, server root password to set the root database password. I will set it to hello123. I save it, and I will also set another attribute, server Debian password, which I will set again to hello123. I save it, and now I will add to the JSON node. I click on it, I add a Magento node. To this node I add another child, a DB node, and here I will set the Magento DB attribute password. So I add a password attribute, which I will set to hello123 again. This is the password for the Magento database. I save the attribute, and now I'll set the template. The second template is for our Magento frontend server. I name it Magento frontend, and I choose again Ubuntu as generic image. I add the template. I will configure again some services. I click on it. Now I will need to add MySQL client recipe, so I click on databases, MySQL, and then MySQL client. And I will also need a Magento recipe, so I click on web, then on Magento, and on Magento again. Here we need to tell the Magento recipe not to install a local MySQL database, which is the default, but to use our backend one instead. So I click on the JSON node, then I add a child, Magento. On this child I add another child, DB, and here I specify a host attribute, host, which I will set to the future DNS name of our backend server, db.demo.tapp.in. Set the attribute, and I add another attribute to the DB node, password. which I will set to the same value I gave to the Magento backend, hello 123. I save the attribute and I save the template. The second thing we need is a specific firewall configuration. So I click on Infrastructure, Firewall, and I create a firewall profile. I give it the name Magento, and the description, firewall for our Magento store, and I add it. This firewall must allow our backend server to receive incoming connections to its MySQL database. So I add a TCP rule allowing traffic for the port range from 33306 to 33306 from any IP. And I add it. And I add the same rule again, but for UDP traffic. I add it, and I save the firewall profile. So I click on Infrastructure Servers, and now I create a workspace. I click on Add Workspace. I name it Store. I select demo.tapp.in as domain, the default SSH profile, and the Magento firewall profile we just created. I add the workspace, I click here, and now inside this workspace, I click on it, we'll create our backend server. I click on Add Server. I will name it Backend. I will give it the DB hostname so that its fully qualified domain name will be db.demo.tapp.in. I will select the Magento backend template we created, and as server plan I will select the 1 GB RAM Rackspace server. Here it is. I click on Add Server, and while it is being commissioned I will create our frontend server. I click on Add Server, I will name it Frontend, I will give it the store hostname, and then as template I will select the Magento frontend one, and as server plan the m1.large server on Amazon on US Virginia, for example. Here it is. I click on Add Server, and now I will put our backend server, and this is very important because we must not put our frontend server till our backend server is operational, otherwise the deployment could fail. Our backend server booting and bootstrapping could take a few minutes. And now that our backend server is operational, I will put our frontend server. We wait until it is operational. And now we could access our Magento store. But first, I will click on Log to search and copy the Magento administration password that the Magento recipe wrote on it. I'm searching for it. Here it is in this line. I select it and copy it in my clipboard. Now we can visit our Magento store in store.demo.tapp.in. Here you have the home page. We can also visit it through an SSL connection. The HTTPS part. So you will see that the certificate is not trusted because it was self-generated by the Magento recipe. To access the administration panel, we write the admin part at the end of the root, and here we can log in using admin as username, and the password we copied from the log. I click login. And here you have the Magento administration panel. And that was all. I hope you enjoy it.